Hello, Prep Wellers. Today we are talking about summer strategies and how you can help your child make the most out of their summer experiences. Now, I'm going to do this exactly the way I do it with my own kids who are in ninth grade, with my online Prep Wellers, and with some of my private students. And I start out on the whiteboard, as we see here. We can see along the top here, we have freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then off to college. Along the bottom, we have some usual suspects here of what students might feel like doing over the course of the summers. And the first thing we're going to see is, man, there are only three summers left, even if you're starting as a freshman. Now, some of you may not have a freshman, you may have a sophomore or junior, so you make the adjustments, but there's summer 1, summer 2, and summer 3. We're not going to count this as a summer. We'll address that at a later point in terms of what you're going to do to prepare for college. Right now, what we're thinking about and considering is what do we do in these interim summers to make sure we get the most out of those summers. So the first thing I like to do is to work backwards and figure out of these different activities, these different options, which ones are the must-haves. So the first thing I like to do is to break these summers into two different blocks, typically a July and an August, roughly. So you basically have six segments to fill. The first non-negotiable in Prepwell Academy is this little block right here. And I have my kids in Prepwellers, they are going to do ACT or SAT study during the second half of this summer. Because I want them to take an early SAT or ACT junior year, then they have time to recover and take one in the middle of the year. And then if they have to take a last one, that's okay too. But I'd like them to have a pretty good idea of where they stand sometime in junior year. So this is a non-negotiable block. Nice to know. The other non-negotiable block is this period right here. This I like to cordon off for essays and applications. So make sure you're not stressing out beginning of senior year. So this block is already spoken for. Now, these can be part-time. This doesn't mean that for 20 hours a day you're doing these things, but I want uninterrupted time during these blocks to focus on these important tasks. So look, it doesn't leave you with too many other blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4 segments left. So then the second thing I like to do is, okay, where would some of these things be the most obvious spots? So for instance, a job. A job is probably going to be more like junior year time frame, because sometimes in freshman year you might be a little bit too young, you might get aged out. Maybe by the time you're in between junior and senior year, you have an idea of what type of job you might like, which would be nice. So that's probably a good time for a job. It's also a good time for an internship, because maybe by then you've taken a lot of classes and you have some idea of what you're interested in. What else? Well, let's talk about athletics. Athletics right here, if you're going to go to a camp and you're trying to be recruited, is probably best served somewhere around here. You know, in between freshman and sophomore year, you might be a little bit young, may not be quite as developed. You may not want to wait over here because then it's going to be too late. If you want to be a recruitable athlete, you probably want to focus on this particular block. Now, let's say we're going to do volunteer work. I like to put volunteer work right here. It's easy. It's cheap. You can do it as a youngster, no problem. Get some volunteer work under your belt. Internship can be also here as well as here. Start slotting them in. If you have a particular project that you want to work on, let's say that you're a Boy Scout, you want to do an Eagle Scout project, and sometimes those take a couple weeks. You need to find a spot where you're going to do that. So maybe the Eagle Scout project is right here. And you're going to say, I'm going to do my Eagle Scout project right here. Great, no problem. Maybe you want to do some kind of an educational enrichment program because you want to learn everything that you can about cryptocurrency, or you want to take a particular class in math or science. That's okay. Find a spot. Maybe it's here. Maybe it's here. Maybe it's part-time and it's under here. I think you get the point. I want you to go through each of these different activities and events. Shadowing sessions, they can be here, they can be here, they can be here. They could even be part-time here, so slot them in there. A lot of these things can be both part-time and full-time. Go through each one of these activities. Number one, decide, do you have the means to travel? Is that on your list? Do you have something else? Maybe you have a family reunion that you must go to because it's only every 5 years and the family reunion is always going to be right here. It's going to be this year. So you want to make sure that you carve that place out. So take a macro look at this particular schedule, start mapping in these different activities so that you have a structure, you have an architecture, you have a framework in which to work through. What I don't like seeing happen is people arriving right here with a question mark because they're starting to write their applications out and they're thinking, wow, I don't have a lot of diversity in what I did over the summers. I took a big swing and miss where there's all this opportunity if you get ahead of it and think about it to create unbelievable experiences. So once again, we're not really doing this to pander to the college admissions counselors, although it helps in that regard. But what we're looking for is diversity of experiences, which would be great. And we're looking to try to figure out what you're interested in. If you find out what you're interested in, you can do volunteer work for what you're interested in. You can do an internship in whatever you're interested in. You can get a job in whatever you're interested in. This is key. If you can somehow test the theory on what you think you're going to be interested in, do it each and every summer along the way. Maybe it's part of a job. Maybe it's part of travel. Who knows what it is? And if you can get some diversity in there, because if you come and start filling out your applications and you realize that you were a camp counselor for 4 straight years, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Clearly, that shows depth of commitment, which can be a plus. But it also doesn't have that much diversity in it. Maybe you wanted to try something else. Maybe you wanted to explore and try a different path, a different pattern, something that you're passionate about. So what we're looking for is diversity and trying to hone in on what you're interested in. Those would be the two big goals over the course of these few years. I hope this has been helpful. Sit down with your son or daughter, put this on the big whiteboard, and start mapping out, starting with the must-haves first and the nice-to-haves second.